right, y'all. We're going to go ahead and kick off. Kasim, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us. You're in a room filled with a bunch of agency owners, all sorts of different walks of life, but that partner with us in one way or another. But to everybody, this is Kasim. He is the founder of Solutions 8. If you just simply do a search for Google Ads agency, I believe they literally rank #1. He actually has exited Solutions 8, so it's no longer his full-time thing. And let's see, what else have you done? You're the author of You versus Google, which I believe was like #1, #2 for what categories on Amazon?
I beat Alex Hormozy for a day.
For a day? You beat Alex?
Marketing ever, yeah. Beat Alex for a day.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then you also host a podcast, Perpetual Traffic, right?
I did. I quit that. I was the co-host of Perpetual Traffic for 3 years. That's not really mine. That's Ralph Burns. I was just like, Conan O'Brien, that little fat guy that sits on his couch and makes jokes? I was like that little fat guy. Like Ralph was Conan, and I just every now and again, I was like his minority ticket. Like I helped with the PC card on Perpetual Traffic.
Awesome. And then I think the goal today is Kasim is going to share a couple of things. One, he's going to share a lot of his lessons that he learned growing his agency, which they grew to manage about $100 million of ad spend a year, right? Was it a year, that number? Okay.
$100 million a year, sold for 8 figures, 100 employees, 200 clients. So it scaled to a size larger. I think, agencies tend to peak at around 30 clients. We did significantly more than that. And I can share, there were 2 things that helped us scale to that size, assuming somebody wants to scale to that size, and it's not always advisable. It's also not always most profitable to do that. But the first one is automating your onboarding. I know it sounds like a nit, but I can explain why that's important and critical. And then the second one is a relational database. And I know that sounds really boring, and it is, and it'll be the most boring conversation any of us have all day. But it without that feature or facet, I couldn't have gotten to the size that we got. And I can talk about why. I can even share my database with everybody. Where does this go, Mike? This recording?
This recording, we put it on our YouTube channel and share it out with folks after that.
Okay, I'll need to maybe hide some of what's in the DB if I want to share it.
And by the way, you're more than welcome to say, hey, Mike, like blur this screen, and I'll make sure I do it.
Yeah, dude, if you could do that for me, because there will be like customer information and stuff, and then I can share everything. That's great.
Yeah, I'm happy to blur anything, make sure that it's all good before it goes anywhere. And I'm also happy to send it to you before I actually push it public and all that, so you can review it.
I'll never watch it. I trust you.
Fair enough. But now also Kasim is the founder of Pareto Talent. So one of the big things that we're all about here at that company is valuing your time, right? As a partner, it's all about giving you back your time so you can work on the business instead of in the business. And we do that for helping the sales side and helping actually talk to the customers and manage that whole relationship so you can go out and focus on growing the agency, right? But yet there's still even more on your plate that could be taken off if you had a good administrator, right? So if you had a good executive admin, that could give you back even more time to really focus on your superpower and work on the business even further. And so that is exactly what Pareto Talent does and helps with. I know that's been a question that some of you guys have had over the course of time, like, hey, where can I get a good executive admin? Well, here you go. But I think we're going to start with some of the lessons first of growing an agency and Kasim's background doing that, and then we'll dive into the other part of executive admins. Is that a fair assessment what we're going to cover today, Kasim?
That sounds good. I feel like I keep freezing. Can you all see and hear me okay?
You're good.
Okay, cool.
You are freezing, but we can hear you fine.
I am freezing. How do I not freeze? I'll figure out my internet connectivity, Mike. I'm sorry. I don't know what's happening here.
Jackets usually help.
Yeah, I'm ready to rock, man. I don't know what's going on with my internet. I'm so sorry. I'm at 600 megs up down.
I think you're all right. It's here and there, but so far your voice has yet to cut out. So cool. It might blur a little bit in terms of video, but I've heard your voice the whole time.
Yeah, that sounds good. My not video is probably a better feature. I imagine I'm more palatable if you can't see me. So
Go for it, man. The floor is yours.
yeah, that sounds great. The agency growth scale model, I think, is hyper dependent upon your goals. So I think my ask of the community here would be to guide me. I've built 4 professional services agencies. All of them have hit 7 figures. One hit 8 figures. I've made 2 exits. I have one agency that's mailbox money. It nets $360,000 a year net to me, with 20 minutes a week of intervention. And none of that's meant to brag, right? Like, I'm not trying to sound like a douchebag, but money's how we keep score. So I just want y'all to know I figured out how to win this game, and I can teach you how to win the game too, but it's hyper dependent upon what it is that you want to accomplish. And from an agency perspective, I think that's really important. So what I think everybody should do is have a buy box. And the buy box is you deciding what you want out of life and then helping your agency achieve that goal. Because a growth and scale model for somebody who wants to drink Mai Tais by the beach is that's the wrong agency to build. That's the wrong approach to take. So from everybody here, and is that okay, Mike, if I get interactive?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there's a chat feature, guys. And what I'll kind of share just as a high level mindset, and if any of the community wants to adjust this, since a lot of these folks work with that company where we actually sell and then completely service it so they don't have to touch it other than billing them, they can do that kind of scale model without having to worry about ongoing management and the heavy lifting of building and running teams and that kind of stuff, right?
That's fantastic. I wish I had that when we started. It's funny, man. I built Solutions 8 with the white label paradigm. We built the #1 ranked Google Ads agency in the world, and we actually didn't fulfill on Google Ads, at least not in the beginning. So I'm a real strong believer in the white label approach. And it's just, it's hyper dependent again on how you're fulfilling, how you're selling, what expectations you're trying to manage. But just out of curiosity, what are the problems that you're encountering now? Like, if we could wave a magic wand, you're on this call, right? And this could have been a YouTube video that you watched later. So we're on the call, which means we should get interactive. So guide my muzzle here. I know the agency space. Drop it in a chat or just unmute and tell me, like, what are the problems that you're encountering now as far as reaching your goals of growth and scale, and how do we address those? Because I feel like that's how we maximize the value of our time here.
Absolutely. All right, y'all. You can either drop it into the chat.
Lead acquisition, getting more qualified leads. I've got Jennifer and Jesse, same problem. That's a classic agency problem. That's a good one. We can tackle that. Closing from Jorge, that's great. I've got just a wicked.
And I can actually add to that. So closing as a new agency that doesn't have case studies, testimonials, all that good stuff.
Yep.
And not necessarily like the cash of, I'm just going to give it away either.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm going to talk about lead acquisition first. Brent says all of the above. Lead generation from an agency perspective is going to get easier and better for you as you niche down. So for as long as you're doing everything to everybody, you're going to get diluted leads, you're going to have diluted sales conversations, and you're going to have a hard time articulating very specific value propositions, especially because you have folks like Mike doing the back-end fulfillment. I think the luxury that you would have is on the front end, trying to have really specific conversations. And I'll give you a couple of examples. There's 2 axes to niching. The x-axis is your industry niche, and the y-axis is your service niche. And so the industry could be like, whatever, auto mechanics, Montessori schools, dance schools, SaaS providers, professional service providers, financial consultants, whatever. Pick an industry, and then your y-axis is your service niche. So within the realm of digital marketing, there's a bunch of digital marketing features, right? Like you could do paid traffic, organic traffic, social, funnels, maintenance management, PR, whatever. If you're trying to do everything to everybody, that's really hard for lead generation. And that's generally where we all start, by the way. So offer yourself forgiveness and grace right now today if this is what you're doing, because it's kind of how you have to start while you get your feet wet. But as you're doing the everything to everybody model, what you'll start to see is there's traction. And the traction, generally speaking, is specific to you. Like you gain traction in a certain industry, in a certain geography, with a certain offering. And as you niche down into that industry or offering, you end up with, I think, an easier to articulate value proposition and an easier to fulfill on marketing model. So I'll give you an example. We were running ads for people at Solutions 8, and we ran ads for literally everybody all the time. It didn't matter who you were, we were going to run ads for you. And I had a gentleman come in as a client. His name was Matt Hillis. Matt owned 4 Montessori schools. And Matt kept telling me, dude, I wish we could give this to all Montessori schools. This is amazing. And I'd be like, well, Matt, go sell me to your Montessori buddies, dude. Like, have at it. And he goes, yeah, they can't afford you. Matt had 4 schools, was doing multi-millions in revenue. And I was charging him, I don't know what, it was like 5 figures a month. So it was 4, 5, 6, 7 grand a month. But he's a great big school. Most Montessori schools can't afford that. Most Montessori schools are, one person in a home servicing 30 children. So what we did is we took what we built for Matt and we scaled it. I just dropped into chat the example agency I'm giving you. We took what we did for Matt and we templatized it. So now, instead of having to do one service for one client one time, which is expensive, you take that service that you've done, but all the content becomes the same. All the offer becomes the same. The call to action becomes the same. The copy, the funnel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if I'm selling this one time to one client, I have to charge 4, 5, 6 grand a month. But if I'm selling this one time to 4,500 clients, because there's 4,500 accredited Montessori schools in the United States, I can charge a fraction of that. This, by the way, is the agency that nets $360,000 a year with 45 minutes a week of my intervention. So from a lead gen perspective, if you want qualified leads, you have to have a qualified offering. And you ask yourself, what makes an offering qualified? And the answer is specificity. So if you don't have applied specificity in the very beginning, that's okay, but you have to go out and get it. So work in the market in a broad way, and you start offering everything to everybody. And this is a horrible way to do business, but it's the only way to do business in order to learn. But as you start to learn, and you only need 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 clients to begin to learn, you'll start to see, wow, this is really where I can niche down. And there's an underserved market here, or there's a lot of margin with this service there. You might niche down from an industry perspective and say, you know what, I'm getting a lot of traction in the trades. And maybe it's because of your network, where you are, how you speak, what your background is. Or you might say, you know what, I'm doing really well with organic SEO, right? So there's the x-axis is the trades, or the y-axis is the service. And you can niche down along the level of analysis that you feel most comfortable with. My preference for me was niching down from a service perspective. So before I niche down from an industry perspective, I like niching down from a service perspective because it means I get really, really, really good at my product. Even if you're white labeling, and I was white labeling Google Ads, by the way, that doesn't mean that you don't have to be good. Because even though Mike's doing the work, you have to articulate the work. You have to manage expectations. You have to teach people why it's important. You have to teach them how to be good buyers. So I like getting good at the work. But if I had an industry background, if I had any level of professional experience, if you have inroads, familial experience, your mom and dad used to own a Persian restaurant, let's say, well, every Persian restaurant in the whole wide world needs all digital marketing services, and nobody wants to deal with Persian restaurants because they're little teeny tiny businesses that have one retail location. They're not going to be able to spend enough money in order to be good one-off clients. So lead quality comes from offer quality, and offer quality comes from specificity. Now, I realize I didn't answer anybody's immediate problem, but what I'm hoping I'm doing is giving you the framework for a long-term solution, because the long-term solution is going to come in getting really, really, really specific. All the money that I've made, I had the highest performing real estate investment campaign on the planet for 7 years. We were generating motivated seller leads for fix and flippers. Now that's hyper specific, right? It's not real estate leads. It's not even real estate investor leads. It's real estate investor leads for fix and flip and creatively structured deals. And as soon as we got ultra specific, now I had a business. Montessori schools isn't schools. It's not preschools. It's not private preschools. It's private Montessori preschools. Ultra specific. Google Ads. Google Ads isn't marketing. It's not digital marketing. It's not paid traffic. It's Google Ads. It's ultra specific. So start broad and go narrow. And then as you start broad and go narrow, what you'll start to realize is the quality of the conversations that you're having are better. The quality of the offer that you have is better. And your ability to find those people increases on an exponential scale. Because if I know, I need to sell digital marketing services to small businesses, there's nowhere for me to go. It's every BNI meeting, and now I'm competing with everybody that's ever spoken. But if I need to go after Montessori schools or real estate investors or stonemasons, well, there's professional organizations, pre-existing groups. Like you can instantly point your muzzle. I'm going to pause there. How am I doing, Mike? Is this valuable, or am I boring everybody?
Yeah, this is awesome. This honestly, taps into what I talk about all the time of when you're first starting out, everybody asks me, hey, what should I niche down in? I'm like, well, let your niche find you. What's your personal background? Because, leverage that because, that's the only thing that makes you unique compared to all the hundreds of other agencies I work with is you. So leverage that and then get a couple of clients and then make case studies, testimonials, and then just narrow down on the niche after you've kind of had it discovered. So start broad, go narrow. Totally makes sense.
Start broad,
Totally
go
makes
narrow.
sense.
Yeah, it's called the corridor principle. The corridor principle says that you're not going to identify the actual opportunity until you're already out on the field of play, which is so frustrating. But it's been true historically across like every major success. Henry Ford discovered the assembly line working at a meatpacking plant, right? So Henry Ford didn't start working at a meatpacking plant thinking, oh, I want to learn how to build cars. But he wouldn't have learned to build cars until he got the job at the meatpacking plant. So if you're a little frustrated at your lack of traction, give yourself the grace by understanding that you're just at your meatpacking plant right now. And maybe, you're sitting here trying to sell a faster, whatever, a longer lasting light bulb, only to realize that the manufacturing process for light bulbs is massively flawed because of the way the transportation system works, and you're going to end up getting into transportation, to use a horrible analogy, right? Like just trying to articulate the quarter principle a little bit better. Once you've identified your niche, and you don't have to niche down too drastically, but once you've identified your niche, the single most valuable thing you can do from a lead generation perspective is content creation. It's actually calls like this. It's a mastermind like this. Look what Mike's doing. Mike has a client. He knows his avatar. It's ultra specific. Now, is he rubbing something in your face saying, buy from me, give me money? No. He's giving you insane amounts of value with the hope that on a long enough timeline, you're like, you know what? I know this guy. I like this guy. I trust this guy. He's delivered on promises. Maybe I should work with him. Right? Like that ends up being the piece. And I don't know your whole business model, Mike, inside out, upside down, left, right, and center, but I imagine that's the approach that we want to take with everybody. There's this horrible click to buy gremlin in everybody's mind, especially in the agency space. You think to yourself, I run ads, I should get a customer 30 days later. And that's not the way that any of this works at all. As soon as you've identified your niche, start creating content within the content network that you like most, as long as that network is somehow applicable to your client base. So if you're selling AARP, don't go to TikTok, obviously, right? Like figure out a way, figure out the content networks that are accessible to your avatar. But as long as a content network is accessible to your avatar, don't pick the network that you think is going to be the best. Pick the network that you know you're going to be the most consistent with. And then create epic content and love on your avatar on an ongoing basis. The reason Solutions 8 grew to the degree that it grew was because of our YouTube channel. I have a YouTube channel. You can go right now. It's not good. That's the best part about my YouTube channel. I have 35,000 subscribers. My videos are garbage. My production value is garbage. My lighting is garbage. My camera setup is garbage. My content's amazing. And we just gave people the secret sauce on Google Ads. Here's how to do it, why to do it, when to do it, where to do it. And I shot one video every single day for years. And with 30,000 subscribers, 35,000 subscribers, I built an agency that I sold for 8 figures. 35,000 subscribers adjusted for margin of error is 0 subscribers. That's the smallest YouTube channel in the history of YouTube, right? And yet it was worth 8 figures to me. So you don't need massive visibility. You don't need millions of followers. You don't need any of that. You need to just create content that's applicable to the niche that you've chosen and valuable, and do the content. I know I can create videos because I like to talk. You can tell I like the sound of my own voice. I have the sad, pathetic personality that enjoys attention. So I can just sit on here and I can talk. I can spreck in the bushy babble forever and a day. I create videos really well. You might not create videos. Let's say you really like to write. Then maybe you should go to LinkedIn or to Twitter. Or you like videos, but you like short form. Maybe that's TikTok and Instagram. Or, you want to do blogging, which is SEO related. Or you want to do a podcast. You do really well if you're talking to somebody else. Figure out where you're going to create content consistently and choose one and then focus on it. And expect it to take time. That sucks, doesn't it? Everybody's like, how do I get lead tomorrow? Guess what? You don't. You don't. Who wants to buy from an agency that they met yesterday? I don't. I want to know you. I want to like you. I want to trust you. I want you to earn my business, earn my respect, prove that you can do what you say you're going to do. So in the very beginning, it's a slog. It's a grind. It's hard. And that's why so many people burn out of it. But the people that hang on, the agency business is the best business. It's the only business I know where you can start it with effectively no costs. You can outsource all of the fulfillment, and you really can have Mai Tais by the beach. This really could be the 4-hour work week for you. But the 4-hour work week, by the way, takes a lot longer than 4 hours in the very beginning. You got to put the work in. So find your niche. Once you've niched down, create unbelievable content, do so consistently. And then what you'll find is 3, 6, 9, 12, 18 months from you starting to really create phenomenal content, all of a sudden you're a thought leader. And I can tell y'all, we built the #1 ranked Google Ads agency in the world. And you know what? It was easy. It was easy because every other Google Ads agency was, there's that fun saying, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today. No other Google Ads agency was willing to create the content. I started late. I came to the Google Ads game late. There were established thought leaders in Google Ads. None of them were giving away the secret sauce. None of them were teaching people how to run in Google Ads. None of them were telling, and here's the best part, I didn't run Google Ads. I was outsourcing to another agency. So I was just watching what they were doing and shooting videos about it. They would teach me day 1, day 2, I'd go teach my audience. It was symbiotic. So establish yourself as a thought leader, love and serve your niche. And man, those leads, here's the best part is I had a wait list. I had people scheduling appointments with us saying, can you please take us as clients? We promised to have reasonable expectations. It was such a switch from the early days of my agency when I was buying leads off of Thumbtack and people like, well, what can you guarantee? And what are you going to promise me? And how long is it going to take? Like I was charging more than anybody in the market was charging. I was the most expensive Google Ads agency in the market. I would start my calls that way, by the way. I'd say, listen, if you talk to 10 agencies today, I'm probably more expensive than 8 of them. If that's a deal breaker, I totally understand. But if you think I'm expensive, wait until you hire a cheap agency. So we were able to approach from above because they'd seen my face, they heard my voice, they trusted me, they knew that I knew what I was doing, and we established that level of pedigree and that thought leadership. There's no replacement for thought leadership. There's no replacement for thought leadership. And everything's going to be a founder-led business in the 21st century. Mark my words. People do business with people. They don't do business with brands. And that's only getting more and more and more true. So if you don't want to show your face, you don't have to show your face. You can just do screen share. I'd strongly recommend it, by the way. I think you're putting yourself at a massive disadvantage. If you don't want to do it, maybe you have a business partner that will. But go out there, provide content, love on folks, build the reputation of the brand that allows you to then drop leads. Because paying for traffic, I'm a paid traffic guy, y'all. I was managing $100 million in ad spend. That's a lot of money. And I can tell you that paid traffic is a bubble. And it's like being a crack addict. Every time you want to get high, you got to smoke more crack. It's horrible. And crack can get expensive if you're smoking a lot of it, right? Nobody wants to be a crack addict. Don't do that. Organic is it's like owning a farm. You just go outside anytime you want and you pick what you've grown, but it takes time. It takes time. So how did that land? Did I make anybody mad?
That's beautiful, man. That was awesome.
Great analogies. I love the farm versus the crack. That's a perfect that's spot on, 100%.
Yeah, well, and in fairness, I hope I'm not criticizing anybody. Y'all, I was a crack addict for years, metaphorically speaking. I was the agency owner that was constantly going out and trying to get that next hit. Like, where do I get my next client? I got to squeeze the market and I got to, pound the pavement and cold call and direct mail and paid for traffic. And in the beginning, you do have to do that. That's true. You have to do that. It is what it is. It's life. And while you're doing that, grow your farm. Like just invest in the ecosystem that is necessary in order to build up an organic following. And again, you don't need a lot of followers. There's a paradigm out there. I forgot who wrote this, but I think it's a blog. It started as a blog and he has a book, but it's called 1,000 True Fans. If all you have is 1,000 true fans, you can eat off that for the rest of your life. And your fans, by the way, are probably going to be a lot like you. So any of the things that you think are a disadvantage, if you might say to yourself like, oh, I'm a little bit older than most agency owners, or, oh, I'm a little bit younger than most agency owners, or, oh, I'm in an international market, I'm in the Philippines, or, oh, like whatever it ends up being that you think is a disadvantage, that's the thing specifically that's going to resonate with the market. And you're going to be the one that bridges the gap for them. So don't allow yourself to be held back by anything, because the nice thing about founder-led businesses is it's the founder first and the business second. Everything about you is a value proposition. I'm a college dropout. I was a car thief. My little brother did 6 years in a federal penitentiary on a 4-yard. I was raised by a blind single mother on Social Security disability in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We're welfare babies. All that stuff are things that I could be like massively insecure about. Or I can talk about humble beginnings, and guess who comes to me? Guess who's interested in working with me? Entrepreneurs from humble beginnings. People who are like, you know what, man, that really resonates. I had a rough go of it too. And I really appreciate you being honest about it, because I've always been so ashamed and I didn't want to talk about it. And the fact that you did that it makes me feel empowered. Those are the types of things that you want to be able to put out there. Be open, be honest, be authentic, to the point that you think you want to be sophisticated with your truth, right? Like those people that overshare on the elevator when I just met you, you're weird, leave me alone, I don't want to talk to you. But as it's applicable and relevant, I think that you sharing who you are, how you are, why you are, it attracts and repels. You're going to attract the people that'll love you, and you're going to repel the people that won't. And guess what? You didn't want to work with them anyway, right? That's the worst money you can take, are clients that are bad clients. So this founder-led content creation puts you in a position to really capture people that they come to you and they're the perfect client. And I'm trying not to be hyperbolic or exaggerate, but they really were. I'd have clients come to me that already knew what it took to be a good client for me, because they'd watched hundreds of hours of my YouTube videos. They would quote shit back to me that I'd forgotten. They knew more about Google Ads than I did. I swear. I'm not kidding. I'm not exaggerating. And I would joke. I'd be like, dude, you know more than I do. It's a good thing that I've got smarter people running ads behind me. So anyway, I feel like I've beat that horse to death a little bit.
That is awesome. I got to ask this question. Obviously, you successfully exited your agency, and you as part of the brand is a big deal. So how did that impact that, though, right? How did that impact the exit? How did, because I think that's always been, so let me just kind of share. Ken, our CEO, who's my father, has always been like, hey, I don't want to make it about me, because then, exiting is going to be difficult, right? I want to build systems and all that, which of course you do that too. But he was like, I never want to be the brand. Obviously, things have changed over the years. What are your thoughts on that? How did that impact your exit?
It doesn't matter anymore, dude. I hate to be so dismissive of the question, because it's a really good question, and it's one I get all the time. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, founder-led businesses were hard to sell. Today, almost all businesses are founder-led businesses. And if you look at, that's true, right? Like George Clooney, Ryan Reynolds, like everybody's got The Rock, everybody's got these founder-led products, and they're being purchased. Clooney sold his business for $1 billion. The Kardashians sold their business for $1 billion. All of those are founder-led businesses. Founder-led businesses, all they're paying attention to is multiples of EBITDA. And the question becomes, can we transition the founder out or pay you to keep doing what you're doing? And the answer in both instances is almost always yes. I got 6x on my EBITDA. So I got paid, and EBITDA is just a fancy word for net profit. I didn't know that until I sold my business. It's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. They gave me 6 times what I would make in 1 year. I got 6 years worth of net profit right out of the gate. And it was me and my business partner were the face of the business. And they weren't even really that interested in keeping us around. We had a 2-year earnout, so we had to stick around for the earnout. But if I wanted to negotiate an early exit, they were perfectly fine with that, because it's gotten so commonplace for founders to transition out. GoDaddy did it. Bob Parsons was a huge part of GoDaddy. GoDaddy was purchased by a private equity firm, and then they just transitioned them out. And they went from like bikini-clad women on the Super Bowl to a family-friendly brand with the heart as a logo. Like, private equity does not care anymore, dude. If you've got the EBITDA and you've got the potential scale, and sometimes I think it's hubris, actually, to be honest with you. I think that they might be exaggerating their capabilities, but they're more than willing to try to either transition you out or keep you on a performance basis, which, to be honest with you, as a founder, is a good place to be. If somebody wanted to pay me a multi-6-figure income for just shooting YouTube videos, which has been more or less my last 2 years, I'll do that. It takes me an hour a week, a couple hours a week. Yeah, bet. That's a deal.
Awesome. Thank you. Let me ask this, because lead acquisition, you kind of went into niching. You kind of shared, hey, people focus on maybe a network that you already have, people you already have access to, your background, etc. But however, you grew a huge PPC ad agency. There had to be some trends, because you weren't niche specific for that one. You built sub-niched agencies, and that's been their own builds, right? And that came out of opportunity of just being on the field. But the unniched agency that was, service niched, what were like the top industries that you guys would just actually, you get tons of customers, you'd kill it for, like, if there was an area to focus in on that's higher level, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it was funny. Solutions 8 became my metal detector. So it would teach me what industries were working really well, and then I would roll up little businesses for that industry. So like our real estate investment agency was birthed from Solutions 8 because I had a couple of real estate investors and they worked really well. So I would use that as the opportunity finder, and then I'd build small businesses with those opportunities. The interesting thing about finding those pockets, though, is it's a double-edged sword. For instance, we had a lot of success in the rehab space, rehab clinics, drug rehabilitation. I ended up with 4 or 5 clients in the rehabilitation space. We were actually planning on opening an agency just for rehabilitation clinics. And overnight, Google pulls the plug on all rehab ads, won't allow rehab clinics to advertise at all. They ended up changing this rule. You have to be like SureScript certified or something in order to advertise, but it took a year and a half for that rule to change. And I lost 5 or 6 clients overnight, which for an agency, now we were big enough at the time to where I could absorb that loss and it wasn't catastrophically damaging. I didn't have to lay people off. But imagine if I'd put all my eggs in that rehab clinic basket and I became a Google Ads agency for rehab clinics. And then Google's like, haha, just kidding, which they do all the time. There are industries that get burned all the time. We had a client that was in the managed service provider space. We were minting money. It was amazing. And then a private equity group came in and put in $100 million capital injection to one of their competitors. And overnight, literally, our cost per click went from $15 to $150.
Wow.
Industry gone. And that happens all the time. So I like to always kind of have one foot on the boat, one foot on the dock. That's why I like having my opportunity finder business and then my little niche businesses. You know, I'm the biggest name in the space of Montessori marketing, which is a funny thing to say, right? Because there's like 4 agencies that service Montessori. But the day that, you know, let's say, I don't know what, the president outlaws Montessori, that business is gone for me. So I've got a business partner in my mastermind, Perry Belcher, and he says something that I think is really brilliant. He says every entrepreneur should be growing 2 businesses at any given time, a business to cash flow and a business to exit. And you want to, and what I like about that is we all hear like, oh, focus on one thing, you know, niche down, Gary Keller, all that. First of all, you're an entrepreneur. You're not going to do that anyway. Second of all, entrepreneurship is such a massive risk that it doesn't make sense not to have some level of backup plan. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to have an entirely different business model. You don't want to open a bakery and an airline, right? Like that's stupid. That's hard because to be a baker's hard and to be an airline pilot, I'm sure is even harder. But if you had a Google Ads agency and one facet of your Google Ads agency was just real estate investors and one facet of your ad agency was, you know, everybody, well, that's okay, right? Because now it's like my real estate investors, that was high margin, high profit. But guess what happened? We had to sell that agency in 2019 because the real estate market turned. So for 7 years, I'm minting money. And then all of a sudden things start to taper off and I saw the writing on the wall and we got out, but we didn't get out for nearly as much as I would have liked to. So I like the idea that I'm able to mitigate risk. And it's another reason that I like the agency business model because you can own 7 brands, right? You can own 700 brands. There are people that do. I know people that do, that own multiple brands serving multiple niches. And there's nothing wrong with it as long as you're actually able to fulfill on those promises.
Love it. Love it. What else, guys? What else can we talk about? So let's go back to the early beginnings. So some of our partners, brand new startup agencies, struggling to close their first few customers. You know, you talked about content. Obviously, that's a way to start growing the farm. But what advice would you give those guys that, you know, hey, we've been hustling. I've got meetings. They're not you know, Marty and Mike, they're good, but it ain't happening. It's not closing.
Yeah, I would say in the very, very beginning, if you're truly at early stage, like pre-revenue, early stage, I think you have to work for free. And I know everybody just cringed a little bit and said like, dude, what are you talking about? But here's the thing is if you look at it from a practical perspective, you don't have the background or the pedigree to prove yourself yet. And so what I would do if I were early stage, if I had to start over, and I did this, by the way, this was the beginning of my entrepreneurial career. I ended up, I had a business that failed. I was building banking software during the banking collapse. I was in First National Bank of Arizona when the FDIC pulled up with their big black SUVs and started kicking down doors. I lost everything. House to foreclosure, car to repossession. I'm living in this little trap house because my brother's a heroin addict. It was the worst time of my life. I have no money. I'm trolling Costco for free tryouts to eat. Like when I say no money, some people say no money and they're like, oh, I had to cancel Netflix. I'm like, we didn't eat, like it was zero. I had a laptop without a battery. I couldn't go to remote meetings without plugging in, like no money. And I start trolling Craigslist and just walking around. I lived on Frank Lloyd Wright in 101, and I walked around to small businesses and office parks, and I'd literally just knock on doors. And I'd let people know, like, hey, I really want to help you grow your business. And some of the things that I was capable of, I kind of knew how to, again, what would you say? Posit the value proposition in a compelling way. So a lot of people want to know, where am I going to get leads? How am I going to get customers? What I'd recommend to early stage marketers, it's really hard to get new leads. Hard. It's a lot easier to optimize existing processes and go back to cold and dead leads. So if you can go to old businesses that have been around for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, especially ones that haven't done the analog to digital conversion. So there's like an old print shop in your neighborhood. They've been around there for 70 years. It's mom and pop kettle. They've never updated. They don't even have a CRM. They still use those carbon fiber receipts. And their customer list is an Office Depot box just full of manila folders. Gold mine. Because imagine if you were to go in there, scan all that shit, digitize it. Maybe you have to do the data entry yourself. Maybe you can afford to find somebody on Fiverr, and you do their first email campaign. Hey, y'all, remember Print Plus? You came to us at one point. And we just want to let you know we're trying to grow. We're a small family-owned business here in the community, and we're offering 10% off. Worst email ever sent. Bet money you get clients out of that, right? So lead redemption, lead retention, improving sales processes, and that's all stuff you can do without massive costs of goods. And it's even stuff you can do just sweat of your brow, sweat equity. Like, hey, let me come into your business and see if I can improve things. It won't cost you a dime for the first month. But if I do improve something, I want to know that you're committed to me and you're going to pay me whatever it is on a monthly basis. That first $500 a month, man, that'll do everything for you. Now you actually have some traction, but you gotta be the one to give first. That's the rule. Give first, give more, give often. Give. You're not a vending machine. It's not a transaction. This $1 in for a candy bar, who wants to do that? Give more than you're asking for. And it's interesting. I hate to sound like such a Buddhist, but like life will reciprocate, like just love on folks, help them improve their business, and be honest. Hey, I've never done this before, but I'm really passionate. I'm going to work really hard, and I'm going to charge you less than anybody else will ever charge you. And I'm not going to stop trying until I figure it out. So if you've got that customer list I can go and I can love on and I can try to redeem your customers, if I make that work for you, will you A, hire me, and B, act as a testimonial so I can get my next client even easier? Who wouldn't say yes to that? Right? Like, this is the most compelling sales pitch in the world. It's like, yeah, absolutely. I love your passion. Let's do that.
So guys, I don't know if you caught all what he said there, but the database reactivation campaign costs nothing. Right?
Yep.
To go get all of the emails, all of the phone numbers of their past customers and literally just send out a blast, whether that's both text and email, is something you could, if you are brand new, you could absolutely offer that for free, service that personally, get a customer, get a testimonial, and then now upsell, get referrals, all of that good stuff, right? So if you are struggling, and you're like, well, how the heck am I going to give something away for free? Mike and Marty, they're not going to work for free for me. So how do I do that? A database reactivation campaign absolutely could be that one thing that you go out and get those first few customers.
100%. And stop trying to automate stuff. Everybody wants to automate and scale right out of the gate. Y'all, you can't. I'm a decamillionaire. I'm taking sales calls for my new business. I'm not trying to automate it. I'm not trying to scale it. I'm taking sales calls for a business where I make $500 a month when it closes. It's not worth my time, but I can't learn how to speak to the customer, what the offer should look like, how to scale the offer, what the processes look like. All the $5,000 an hour work that I need to do is birthed from what I learn in those discussions. Automation comes way later. Automation applied to an inefficient system only amplifies the inefficiencies. You don't know if you have an inefficient yet. You don't know if you have a good model yet. Do the grunt work. Do the stuff that doesn't scale. That's the stuff nobody's willing to do. Jennifer, you have your hand up.
Yeah. So I understand the reactivation or being able to work for free. But what if you're in a situation of like, I'm still fairly new. I've been trying at this game for actually over a year. I do have 2 clients, but both of them we're now in month 2, going in month 3, and they're not doing well.
What is it you're offering those clients, Jennifer?
PPC.
Who's running the ads?
Google. We are that
Okay.
company.
That's great. The fact that you actually have the fulfillment on the back end is really helpful. I think, and this isn't going to help you now, so we're going to have 2 conversations. The first conversation is going to be what to do long term. There's an expectation management that needs to be set in the very beginning. PPC doesn't go well month 1 or 2 or 3. It's a slow burn, and it takes time to learn the market, for the algorithm to learn the pixel, for us to test offers, et cetera, et cetera. So your job isn't to talk them into the fact that this will work. Your job is to be their advocate and to explain to them why it takes time and what's happening. And my rule has always been, and Mike, you can shoot me in the face if I say something that you hate. I
Good.
think we should fire the client before they fire us. So if I'm working with a client and we're running ads, this is why I stopped working with residential realtors, because I try to run an ad for a residential realtor and I'd be like, man, the cost per click is too high. The cost per impression is too high. The lead quality is too low. I'm saying those things, they're not. So if your client's coming to you with the red flags, the advocacy isn't pointed in the right direction. You want to advocate on their behalf and be like, you know what, we're running these ads and the cost per traffic is too high. We're going to try this. You know what, the cost per this is, and you don't need to know those things. You get those from your provider. The provider can explain to you why this isn't working. It's arbitrage. PPC it's not a black box. It makes a lot of sense. It's, hey, the market is willing to spend $30 per click. Every 10 clicks gets you a lead. That's $300 a lead. Every 10 leads get you a customer. That's $3,000 per customer. And then you get to say, well, that's great because my customer makes $5,000. Or that's horrible because my customer only makes $2,000. Easy math. And so now we get to go to the customer and say, these are our levers. The cost of the traffic is too high. We can't bid on those phrases. What else do you got? Or you're not closing enough leads. You're only closing 1 out of 10. You got to close 1 out of 5. How do we optimize your sales process? You're a doctor. You're diagnosing the problem and then prescribing accordingly. But I would manage the expectation from the outset that, hey, this is going to take time. There's no guarantee that it works, but I'm going to be here with you explaining what's happening and talking about the things that need to take place. When we treat marketing like a button that can be pressed, that's when it's fearful. Really what you're doing is you're just trying to see how their business operates and interacts in an organic ecosystem. Was that helpful at all?
Yeah, it was really helpful. What I think what we're struggling with is 2 different components. Is one, one client, he actually tried another PPC company and it was on a different account. And so we've had to rebuild a totally different account, but he had tried to scale that ad much higher, but still didn't get quality leads.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're dealing with kind of the same thing, but we're on a new ad account and we're dealing at a lower scale, but he feels like all the leads are coming in are bots. They're not actual real people.
Yeah, you might not be wrong. The problem with the Google Ads ecosystem is infected right now with phony traffic. There's a study out of NYU. They found 70 to 80% of the traffic on the Google ecosystem could actually be bots. And Google doesn't want anybody to know because they're terrified of an antitrust suit. I wouldn't tell your client that. I think that with somebody who's tried it before, and maybe not even somebody who's tried it before, the narrative that I would be offering people is, look, I'm going to help you see how your business will perform in an organic ecosystem. It's a lot like being a gladiator. I'm going to hand you a shield. I'm going to hand you a sword. I'm going to throw you into the Coliseum, and we're going to see how you compete. Because I can't influence the fact that your offer isn't as good as your competitors. Your product isn't as good as competitors. You don't have as good of reviews. Your salespeople don't close as well. So the marketing is very much lead a fish to water, and then every problem is an opportunity. And this gets really obnoxious when you're in the position you're in, Jennifer, but hear me out because I think that there's a meta discussion to be had here. If the leads aren't quality, then the question becomes why. Now, if it's a bot problem, that's difficult to hurdle. But if it's, let's, for instance, people are coming in and they're expecting something at a cheaper rate. Well, you know what? We need to change your offer then. We need to modify the messaging here because the messaging that we're using is bringing in the price shoppers instead of the quality shoppers. So how can we do that? Or people aren't necessarily closing. Well, I need to listen to your sales calls. What is it that you're saying that's, how are we leaving this? And I know that actually the fact that Mike does sales is freaking amazing. I've never seen that from a white label perspective. So that's really cool. You could even maybe, I don't know if you'd be open to that, Mike, but I think sales consulting for clients is a great white label service. Because most people don't know how to sell. Most of the lost lead flow that I saw at Solutions 8 was because we would bring the horse to water and then the client couldn't make him drink. But I think all of the problems that the client encounters ends up being an ascension opportunity because chances are, that's the problem, right? If somebody says, let's say that I sell shiny yellow widgets and somebody goes to Google and says, I want to buy a shiny yellow widget. And then we put an ad in front of them that says, buy a shiny yellow widget here. And then they go to the landing page and it says, fill out this form for a shiny yellow widget consultation. And they fill out the form and they hop on the call and then they don't buy a shiny yellow widget. Well, whose fault is that? They said they wanted a shiny yellow widget. We told them we had shiny yellow widgets. They talked to somebody telling them that they had shiny yellow widgets and they didn't buy the shiny yellow widget. Like that's perfect continuity from a marketing perspective. We did our job. So now it's it's up to the agency to go in there and diagnose, hey dude, what are you saying that doesn't make this person do the thing that they said that they were intrinsically qualified to do? And that diagnosis, that's a taxable event in my mind. That's where it's actually an ascension opportunity, coaching opportunity, additional fulfillment opportunity, and you're now the trusted thought leader and the diagnostician instead of just the provider.
Love it, man. Hey, I saw somebody else had their hand up. Who was that? Or do you want to come back, or you're all good? Freeman Agency, Tim.
Hey, sorry. I just wanted to tag back to when you said firing clients first. In the last year, I made a promise to myself to quit chasing and really, really, really trying to service clients that all the data showed growth. They couldn't get through the slow parts. And I was spending so much time trying to massage all this. So I had to make a promise to myself to let go of that stuff. So I've only been really taking the meetings with the more corporate accounts and things that we bring in, because the emotion tied to small biz money, even though I want to help there, but it's helped me because I made more of a decision of the kind of clients we're trying to get. So that's helped. But the niching down also, we're starting to see that student housing is our niche, and so like I'm gearing stuff towards that. But I wouldn't be where we are getting qualified leads like we are without Mike and the team. I'm just saying, and I love you speaking to us, bro. This is good stuff. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate that. And I feel very strongly about, if marketing's not working for somebody, we should let them know. So retention isn't the goal. Success is the goal. And if somebody can't be successful, even if they want to pay you money, it's incumbent upon us to be integrous enough to say, hey, I just don't think this is the right thing for you. And here's why. I never fire a client without explaining why. The market's too expensive. You're not closing well enough. Your offer is too high. Your price too high. You have to down regulate your price. Your contract terms are too long. Whatever it ends up being. And you know what happens every single time? I promise you, every single time when you try to fire a client, they try to stay. It's just this fun idiosyncratic environment where you try to climb, and they're like, no, wait. And then they start to become coachable, and you really can't improve their business.
Rafat.
Hey there, this is really good. Thank you for sharing all this knowledge that you have. One of the questions I have is around on the closing side. You mentioned that you're doing like sales calls right now for this other business as well. I'm curious, what would be the top like 3 things you would say is most important in order to close deals on your sales calls?
Yeah, well, so I'm gonna preface by saying I'm the worst salesperson in the world, and so everything that I say needs to be vetted against what Marty actually does, because it sounds like he's really good at what he does. I really like the negative sale. So I'm going to sell you all Pareto. Okay. Pareto's my new business. That's the calls that I'm taking. And actually I have a script here in front of me. If my freaking camera was working, I could show you. I have this little notebook with my handwritten notes, and I hop on a call. And if I were talking to you, Rafat, I'd say, hey, Rafat, am I saying your name right? Rafat.
Rifat. Yes.
Rafat.
Yeah.
Rafat, I'm going to throw my skunks on the table first. If you hire an EA from us, there's a couple of things that you need to know. The first and most important is you have to meet with them daily. I can't place an EA with anybody that won't meet with them daily, because what we found is every single time that we've placed failures, and we have placed failures in the past, all of those failures would have been mitigated by a daily meeting. So if you're not willing to meet with them for 10 to 15 minutes a day, we're not the right fit. That's skunk number 1. Skunk number 2 is it takes 2 hours to delegate a 30-minute task. And it's way easier to do a 30-minute task yourself the first time. So if you're not willing to take 2 hours to delegate a 30-minute task, the promise there, the value proposition is you never have to do that 30-minute task again. But in the beginning, hiring an EA actually makes you less efficient, not more efficient. So it's going to be a rough 90 days. I'm going to increase your workload, not decrease it. Skunk number 3, you have to meet with us once a week. And on those weekly meetings, we're going to coach you. We're going to coach you on how to be more efficient with your EA, how to be more descriptive in your requests, how to have, more reasonable expectations. And if that doesn't sound like something you want to go through, if you just want the easy button, somebody to, send tasks to, we're the wrong agency. And this is my favorite line. Have I said anything that scares you off? And the answer is always no. It's always like, oh my God, thank you for being so honest. I've had this other EA in the past, and they didn't want us to meet, and that's why it failed. So define all your skunks. Those are the best sales calls. Everything that sucks about working with you, all the reasons that you might say, hey, listen, and I don't know, like I'm a single dad. half the time. My ex-wife and I just got a divorce. I have my children 26 weeks out of the year. If I have my kids, I will not talk to you. I don't take phone calls. I don't take meetings, period, full stop. So you could start by saying like, hey, I'm a parent first. Excuse me, guys. Quick break for water. I'm a parent first. I'm a small business owner. I don't take calls before 8 or after 3. And if that's a deal breaker, I totally understand. And what's going to happen is you're going to have somebody who's like, oh my goodness, yeah, that is a deal breaker. I don't want to do that. Or more likely, you know what? Gosh, I really respect that. You know what? I'm a single mom too. And let me tell you my experience, my journey, my whatever. All your skunks. The skunk could be a new. Hey, I'm brand new. I'm a brand new agency owner. Jennifer, you could say the words out loud. I have 2 clients. I'm still figuring this out. But you're never going to have more attention from a human than you'll have from me. And so if working with somebody who's new at this, if that scares you off, I totally understand. I'm not the right fit. Right? Every reason that somebody might have an objection of working with you, have that conversation at the beginning of the call. And just that level of authenticity is going to put you head and shoulders above 90% of the rest of the market. And then the other thing that I like to do is don't dive into a sales pitch. Now that I've explained my skunks, hey, before I waste any of your time, I just want to tell you why you shouldn't work with me. Let me talk you out of working with you and save you some time. Did I scare you off? And then the answer is no. And then it's, look, I've got this great big long sales pitch I could bore you to death with, but I've learned that it's actually better for me to listen than it is for me to talk. So if you don't mind me asking, why are we on the phone? Like, what about what I said or what my offer or my ad or my page or whatever appealed to you? And what you'll find is the thing that you're selling is rarely the thing that they're buying. And they're going to come to you and they're going to be like, oh gosh, you know what I really need is X. And now you can decide if X is the thing for you or if it's not, and then how you contextualize that. And I think those 2 approaches, that 1-2 punch, ends up making it such a human conversation. And the last piece, and this will get real soapboxy and real touchy-feely, but just love them. Like listen attentively, empathize, and your goal isn't to sell them. Your goal isn't money. Your goal is to help them. And if helping them is telling them, you know what, I don't think you need an agency. I think what you really need is you need an internal employee, or you need a small business loan, or like to be honest with you, I don't think you have really reasonable expectations. That's helping them. And I promise on a long enough timeline, all of that comes right around back. Sometimes the same people. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten calls from folks that are like, you know what, we talked to you 2 years ago and we weren't ready then, but we're ready now. Let's do this. And then it's just an instant close. So I like those. That to me is an organic sales. I don't have like, Cole Gordon's a buddy of mine, so I'm not bashing him at all, but I don't have like a Cole Gordon, these 7 steps in this sequence with this pitch deck. It's just not the way that I function.
I'm taking all the notes, man. I know that they're getting value, but I'm getting value, dude. I love it. I have actually never structured a sales call that way of like, oh, hey, you're going to hate this and this and this and this. Did I scare you? I've never done that, but I love it so much. That is awesome. What other questions we got? We got a couple more minutes here.
I just have to say, so I saw an Instagram reel the other day with a sales pitch just like that, and he called it, he related it to Eminem. Because in Eminem songs, he's like,
Yeah.
I'm terrible,
Well,
I'm white trash, I'm this,
yeah.
and I love it.
That's so funny. I'm going to steal
Yeah.
that. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. Well, it takes all the hot air out of any of their objections. And the problem with sales calls is objection handling. I've always hated the concept of objection handling. It feels like, God, forgive me for using this analogy. I'll soften the analogy a little. It feels like being a pickup artist. Like, have you ever seen the pickup artistry? They're like, here's how to deal with a woman who says no on your first attempt. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me right now? Like, what kind of vile, like that's not the way that we want to function with other human beings. If somebody says no on your first attempt, that might probably mean no, right? So instead, It's like, here's how to really care about somebody and then articulate that care in a way that resonates with them. And objection handling is just, it just feels, there's something about it that does not feel warm and fuzzy for me. It feels like you're trying to be a pickup artist instead of like, hey, I kind of like you. And if you kind of like me too, maybe we could get coffee. And I know that's an awkward approach, but that's the best I've got. I'd much rather that than, the game, let's say.
Yeah, no, it makes so much sense. Rather than thinking about the possible objections through the whole call and not being fully present, just get them out right in the beginning. That's what, that's going to be the hang up and at the end anyway. And roll from there. Love it.
it's also almost like self-deprecating. If you're willing to, take on your abuses or your scars and expose them, and somebody else can't pick at it later and say, well, you didn't come forward because of this. You called it out and you let them know. So
Absolutely. What a good point that is. Yeah, it's like it can't come back later to bite you.
All right, guys. So we're about here at the end. Kasim, thank you so much for your time today. Can you go ahead and drop your link to Pareto Talent in the chat for everybody? So if you guys, you already heard all the skunks. If you like those things and you want an executive admin, which I know some of you guys have brought that up in the past, definitely get in touch. Any final words?
Just keep doing it. So much of it is just hanging on. Don't give up. That's everybody. It's all 3 feet from gold. I think everybody who's been really successful at things like this they're not the smartest. That's the thing. When you go to events, go to traffic and conversion or, the digital marketing summits, and you'll see all these people that are more successful and not as smart as you. There's so many. I used to think that, God, I'm so much smarter than that person. How are they so much more successful than me? And they just hung on. They just hung in there. Just hang on. Just hang on. And it gets better and it gets easier. And in a lot of ways, it gets a lot harder, but that gets fun because that means you're actually making money. And then being in a community, man, like what Mike's doing here, never let go of community. Always invest in community. I think that's the most important part of all entrepreneurship, is just having a community you can go to, places you can ask questions, and pipe up. Like it's if there were 27 people at the peak of this conversation, and I think 3 or 4 people spoke. If you can take yourself out of your comfort zone and get good at asking the quote unquote stupid question, or the one that you're afraid to ask, I think you're going to get more value out of it, and everybody else is going to get more value out of it too. So that got a little preachy, buddy, but I appreciate you, Mike. I'm so sorry my camera's not working, man. I don't know what that's about.
No, you're good. It looked good to me, man. Thank you so much for the time. Thank you for dropping your wisdom and your years of experience. Absolutely amazing. I know that I'm going to be taking and re-preaching and re-echoing some of those things because there's been little things I'm like, oh, wow, this would help our partners. But you have just unlocked some things that I will be continuing to resonate through future masterminds. So thank you for taking the time to do that.
100%. Got your back. Rooting for you guys. High fives. Bye, everybody.
Have a good one.
That was awesome. That resonated.
Mike,
Thank you.
thanks for putting it together.
Absolutely. Thanks, y'all. Have a great rest of your week. See you next week.